현재 제물 조던 힘이죠. 오늘 물론 제물은 아니어도 바कर 다른 건 전도 실무 톰바 두제 잔라기 점사를
To liberate beings, please generate bodhicitta before teaching. Today we will use this class session to teach you about the merit of prayer beads that we often hold in our hands. The merit of prayer beads is described extensively in various sutras, tantras, and treatises by the great masters of the past. Here I will briefly explain to you what kind of dharma object prayer beads actually are. Actually, regardless of what material the prayer beads are made from, for practitioners they should be very important, indispensable blessed objects that are carried with them at all times. Therefore, we should understand the function of prayer beads, their method of use, their merit, and so forth. First, what are prayer beads? What are they called? In Tibetan, prayer beads are called changwa, which means to constantly think of, remember, or hold in mind. It also carries the meaning of continuous mindfulness, an unbroken continuum of remembrance. So when we talk about prayer beads, we need to explain the term itself, which refers to its essence. Practitioners constantly remember, like a string of beads, in an unbroken manner, or hold in mind the Guru, Yidam, Dakini, and Dharma protectors. This method is called prayer beads, or it means that the Guru, Yidam, Dakini, and Dharma protectors constantly watch over us, meaning they continuously watch over us practitioners like a string of beads, bestowing blessings and granting siddhis and wisdom. This is the meaning of prayer beads. Therefore, whether in Chinese, Sanskrit, or Tibetan, they all convey a sense of connection or something continuously strung together. In this way, the symbolic meaning it expresses is that we, as practitioners, through this Dharma object, should constantly remember the Yidam, Guru, Buddha, and Bodhisattvas we rely upon. These are all symbolic objects, we could say. So, through this principle, we can also see that I often have this feeling. When I see a lay practitioner holding prayer beads, I naturally think, oh, this person must be a practitioner. If someone considers themselves to have practiced for many years but doesn't even have a set of prayer beads, sometimes I feel doubtful. Are they really a practitioner without even having prayer beads? Some people often say they have taken refuge for 10 or 8 years but don't even have prayer beads in their hands. Is this really true? Of course, we cannot determine solely based on this that they are not practitioners. But actually, through such external symbolic objects, we can also infer their internal practice or a person's conduct. This is the first point to briefly explain the concept of prayer beads. Second, I want to tell you about the classifications of prayer beads. Actually, all prayer beads can be categorized into the 4 activities of pacifying, increasing, magnetizing, and wrathful. Generally, for pacifying activities, as I have mentioned before, these eliminate diseases, demons, illnesses, and suffering, pacifying all such activities. For these, one should use giant clamshell, generally white in color. As for materials, there can also be some very precious ones, such as genuine crystal, diamond, or other white materials like pearl and so forth. These are generally white in color, and the best materials are jewels. Medium quality would be lotus seeds or other wooden beads. Then for increasing activities, which actually increase merit, reputation, wealth, and so forth, the color is generally yellow. Materials include yellow crystal, yellow amber, jewels, and other wooden prayer beads. These are used for increasing activities. For example, when holding Vajrasattva Dharma assemblies and reciting Vajrasattva mantras, since the main purpose of recitation is to purify one's negative karma, white crystal is primarily used. If I want to practice some wealth deity practices to increase my merit, reputation, and so forth, at that time I would use yellow prayer beads. Then, for magnetizing activities, red ones are used, such as agate, coral, ruby, red crystal, and so forth. Magnetizing activities are for attracting external beings, both human and non-human. For example, when practicing the 9 Avalokiteshvara practices at our academy, during our Vidyadhara assembly, we generally use magnetizing practices. Even usually holding red beads in hand is for magnetizing activities. Previously, during a period when we were reciting Wangdu, the prayer which magnetizes all that appears and all that exists, many people started buying red prayer beads. Eventually, many shops at the academy started raising prices. What originally sold for 5 yuan ended up selling for 50 yuan. So generally, when practicing magnetizing activities, red ones are used. His Holiness basically, in my memory, held red prayer beads. He often held red beads, coral and ruby, sometimes red crystal as well. Holding red prayer beads, these are for magnetizing activities. Then for wrathful activities such as dispelling evil spirits or removing obstacles when practicing special tantric activities, there are turquoise beads, blue or black crystal or dark blue or other materials like sapphire and similar prayer beads. When usually practicing special tantric practices or some of Guru Padmasambhava's subjugation practices, these are used with black, blue, green, and so forth. There are also dizzy beads, eye beads, bodhi seeds, which can be used for various kinds of activities. So generally speaking, different colors, different materials, different prayer beads, when summarized, can actually be used for all four activities of pacifying, increasing, magnetizing, and wrathful practices. Of course, the great masters of the past, some of them would take out different prayer beads when practicing different practices. I heard that some masters from the Palyu lineage in the past had a big bag full of prayer beads. For each practice, each yidam, there were different prayer beads. When practicing red Avalokiteshvara or white Avalokiteshvara, he would specifically look for those beads, sometimes searching for a long time, unable to find them. Then he would take them out and begin practicing. Each master is different in this regard. But some masters, I have also seen a few masters in Tibetan Buddhism, seem to have only one set of prayer beads for all four activities. This is what we teach about the categories of prayer beads and their classifications. Then regarding the number of beads on prayer beads, there are quite a few variations. For example, some scriptures mention 1080 beads and also 100 beads. For instance, 100 beads for pacifying, 108 beads for increasing, 50 beads for magnetizing, 60 beads for wrathful activities. This is also mentioned in some of Sangye Lingpa's Terma teachings. There are also some different explanations. For example, for pacifying activities, 11 beads as well as 108 beads, 50 beads, 21 beads, and so forth. In the Guhyagarbha Tantra teachings of Tibetan Buddhism, there are also such mentions. Of course, in Tang Dynasty Esoteric Buddhism, there are also different ones, such as 7 beads, 17 beads, 14 beads, 21 beads, 27 beads, and so forth, with different explanations. But generally speaking, it's either 108 beads or 106 beads. There are also 102 beads and exactly 100 beads. These are typically the number of beads on the prayer beads we hold. So sometimes we may have 108 beads. And even if we're short or have one or two extra, there's no need to worry too much. Because some Dharma friends' prayer beads, after a long time, may have one or two beads break or get lost in the middle. This situation can happen, but this probably doesn't matter much. Previously, a certain master once said during a teaching that there was a monk in Japan who paid great attention to deportment and was very serious in front of others. Once they went together to give talks somewhere, and that Japanese monk's prayer beads accidentally broke. All the beads were rolling on the ground. But the monk pretended as if nothing had happened and kept his eyes closed. That master said, "If it were me, I would immediately get down and pick up each bead. But each person's style is different. In such circumstances, he didn't care about it. So for some of us, in different situations, our prayer beads may easily scatter, and when we pick them back up, we may not have the full count. Generally, if we don't have a full 100 beads, according to some Tibetan traditions, it's best not to have 99 beads. Because we have a saying that if we intended 100 but one bead is missing from completion, it's like a feeling of unfulfilled wishes. There is such a saying. This is a folk tradition. But regardless, the number of beads on our prayer beads is typically 108. Then, regarding the way we string the beads on prayer beads, the string cannot be too thick. If it's too thick, it's particularly laborious during use. It also cannot be too thin. If it's too thin, it will be very loose. Also, the string cannot be too long. If it's too long, each bead will be very far apart. So generally, according to some practitioners in the past, the string cannot be too thick. If it's too thick, practice cannot progress. It also cannot be too thin. If it's too thin, obstacles easily arise. The string also cannot be too long. If it's too long, it's as if realization is very far away. It also cannot be too tight. If it's too tight, you can't practice and cannot continue. So in the process of stringing prayer beads, there should be an appropriate measure. But now there's also that kind of, that adjustable type with elastic string, which I don't think is very good to use. The kind sold at many monasteries and tourist sites nowadays doesn't seem very good to use. But regardless, for the string we use for prayer beads, in terms of color, there are also different explanations for the 4 activities, but this is not very important. The main thing depends on yourself during use. It should not be too tight or too loose, too long or too short. This is about the string that should be used. This is about the method of stringing them. I see some Dharma friends whose prayer beads are particularly long, seemingly longer than their own bodies. This is not very balanced. Some are especially long, those prayer beads. Of course, according to one's own situation, there's nothing definite about this. Then, where do we usually wear prayer beads? According to scriptures, they can also be worn on the top of the head. If you have a hair knot, have a top knot. You can place them on top of the head. This is also acceptable. They can also be worn around the neck or on the arm. These 3 places are all reasonable according to Buddhist scriptures. If worn on top of the head, it dispels obstacles and hindrances to the body. If worn around the neck, it dispels obstacles related to speech. If worn on the arm, it dispels obstacles related to the mind and the channels, winds, and drops. There is also such a saying. So, when using them ordinarily, wearing them on your hand is acceptable. Then, when using them, generally, in the teachings of Terma masters, it is also explained that when using them, the left hand is used to count. If there are special circumstances, using both hands at the heart is also reasonable. But for most uses, nowadays many people use their right hand. Using the right hand probably isn't greatly unreasonable either. However, in the relevant scriptures and tantras, when using prayer beads, the left hand is used to count. This is very important. This is what is taught about the method of use. Also, when performing consecrations and blessings, generally speaking, the main guru bead in the middle of the prayer beads is placed in the center and stood upright like this. Then, through visualization, recite Om Sobhava Shuddha Sarva Dharma Sobhava Shuddhoham. All phenomena become emptiness. After becoming emptiness, visualize from your own 3 places, the crown of your head, your throat and your heart, the syllables Om Aham respectively, emanating infinite light. From the Pure Land, invite the wisdom awareness to merge into these prayer beads. After merging into the prayer beads, use Ye Dharma Hetu Prabhava and Om Ahum 108 times, as well as the dependent origination mantra and vowel mantras to perform consecration and blessings. After blessing, they can be used. Usually the guru bead of the prayer beads, the large Buddha head, visualize this as the main Yidam deity. The others are visualized as his retinue. For example, if we practice Amitabha practice, visualize this as Amitabha Buddha, and the others as Avalokiteshvara and other retinue members. Also, prayer beads are actually equivalent to a support for our practice, a basis of practice. By relying on them, it's like, for example, a soldier has special insignia, including on their hat or on their body, there are different marks. As a doctor, there are also different insignia for doctors. As practitioners of the 3 roots, it represents their identity or a kind of commemoration, a symbol of spiritual accomplishment. Also, prayer beads can become a support for the 3 jewels. That is to say, the Buddha head represents the Buddha jewel, the continuous Dharma thread represents the Dharma jewel, and these strings of beads represent the Sangha jewel, the individual Sangha members. Everyone should also know this. So, generally, holding prayer beads is a symbol of those who have taken refuge in the 3 jewels. If you can use your own prayer beads, it means that in your heart you always, as we explained earlier, always remember the 3 jewels or keep the 3 jewels in mind or always think of them. It is such a symbol. So this is a method regarding prayer beads, including the use of prayer beads and their stringing method. Later we will also discuss their benefits. At this time we need to know what kind of merit is there actually after holding prayer beads. Actually, for a true practitioner, prayer beads should not be separated from the body. They should often be worn around the neck. When you sleep, place them in a relatively clean place. Usually, it's best not to step over prayer beads or step on them. Treat them like a Buddha statue. Treat them like a Dharma text. In this way, as a support of merit in our daily lives, we should place prayer beads in a very clean place. This is very important. So, what kind of function do prayer beads actually serve? In different scriptures, there are also different records. For example, there is one translated in the Han region called the Mokugenji Sutra or the Mala Prayer Beads Sutra. In the Mokugenji Sutra, it specifically mentions that those who wish to destroy the afflictive obscurations and karmic obscurations should use 108 beads. That is to say, to destroy afflictive obscurations. As everyone knows, these are the afflictive obscurations of karma and afflictions, what are called karmic obscurations. In our mind stream, some karmic results have already ripened. To destroy these kinds of obstacles, one should use these prayer beads, use 108 beads, especially using a kind of Mokugenji seed. Mokugenji is a tree from India. When using these prayer beads, actually it's not only Mokugenji seeds. Any other type of prayer bead material should also be acceptable. When using these prayer beads, they can be used during walking, standing, sitting, and lying down. Moreover, you can recite Namo Buddhaya, Namo Dharmaya, Namo Sanghaya. That is, Namo Buddhaya, Namo Dharmaya, Namo Sanghaya. Reciting like this once, up to 10 times, 20 times, 100 times, 1,000 times, up to 10,000 times, and 1,000,000 times. If you can recite 1,000,000 times, counting with prayer beads, reciting 1,000,000 like this, then those who hear this person's name will also not fall into lower realms. I remember this sutra very clearly. So sometimes when we hold prayer beads, for example, if we use these prayer beads to recite the Avalokiteshvara mantra 10,000 times or 1,000,000 times, This person may outwardly appear to be just someone holding prayer beads every day. What's so special about that? Those who don't understand may feel this way. But actually, Buddhist scriptures explain very clearly, if holding prayer beads, reciting the refuge verse or names of the three jewels, having recited 1,000,000 times, later when someone hears his name, they also will not fall into lower realms. So some of our practitioners are truly like during the Tang dynasty, there was one called Master Daoji. At the beginning, generally in Han Buddhism, it seems that during the Tang dynasty, the most famous, he was also one of the first great masters to use prayer beads. During his recitation practice, he initially used beans to pile up for counting. Each day he recited 70,000 Buddha names. But later it seemed that he couldn't manage with the grains. He specially made some prayer beads and started counting with them. So on the surface we see, oh, this person recited 100,000 times, this person recited 200,000 times. We cannot see on the surface this person's status, merit, or power. But actually, the more mantras and names one recites, the more obstacles in one's own mind stream are eliminated. In this regard, there's nothing to say. It definitely has very great power and effect. But more importantly, when others see him, think of him, or come into contact with him, through his power, others' obstacles will also be dispelled. This has already been proclaimed in the Vajra words of the Buddha. We as practitioners should be able to understand this. Also, in the Han region long ago, there was a text called the Vajrasekhara Yoga Mala Sutra, translated by Amoga Vajra. At that time, Vairocana Buddha instructed Vajrasattva Bodhisattva to teach the merits of prayer beads. Many merits of prayer beads are explained in this text. For example, the large guru bead or mother bead of the mala can be visualized as Amitabha Buddha. The other beads can be visualized as Avalokiteshvara. But it clearly states in this text that generally when reciting one should not cross over the guru bead. This is stated in this sutra. There is debate about this in the Han region and also in Tibetan areas. But when we recite, it's best not to cross over or flip past the mother bead. This is explained in that sutra. Of course, some great masters in Tibetan Buddhism and Han Chinese Buddhism do cross over it. But if they cross over it, they probably have their own explanations for this. In any case, it is already explained here. The number of beads on a mala can be as many as 1,080 or as few as around 10. The merits of prayer beads are explained quite extensively. There is also another sutra called the Sutra on comparing the merits of counting beads. There is such a sutra. Actually, these sutras are quite short, but as a Buddhist practitioner, it would be better to understand these sutras. At the beginning of this sutra, what does it explain? Manjushri Bodhisattva spoke about the various different types of prayer beads. For example, what crystal malas are like, what Bodhi seed malas are like. But among all the types of prayer beads, the one with the greatest merit is the crystal mala. If you recite once with a crystal mala, it multiplies by 10,000 times 10,000, which means it increases by 100 million times. For Bodhi seed malas, the merit increases immeasurably, very extensively. At this point, the Buddha told a story in the middle. Why do Bodhi seeds have such great merit? The Buddha told about these merits. Long ago, there was a person from a non-Buddhist tradition who ordinarily held wrong views and constantly slandered the Buddha. But once his child was killed by a non-human being. After being killed, he was extremely sorrowful. He thought, if the Buddha truly has power, could my son be revived? Later, he brought the corpse to the Bodhi tree, and for 7 days he single-mindedly recited the Buddha's name, hoping his son would come back to life. After 7 days, indeed, his son was revived. After being revived, he began to take refuge. At that time, he said, although the Buddha has already passed into nirvana, if the Bodhi tree has a power and has its blessings, he hoped that through the power of this sacred tree, his son would come back to life. Indeed, his son was revived. From that time on, he himself also took refuge in the Buddhist path. At that time, the Buddha also explained why Bodhi seeds have such great merit. Because through the Buddha's accomplishment, the Bodhi tree has such merits and power. So generally speaking, at any time, Bodhi seed prayer beads are the best material. But nowadays, many people think theirs are Bodhi seeds, but I feel they may not necessarily be. Because according to related historical sources, true Bodhi seeds come from the tree at the Vajra seat in Bodh Gaya, where the Buddha attained enlightenment, called the Bodhi tree. Generally speaking, Bodhi trees, like the Bodhi trees where other Tathagatas attained enlightenment, may exist in the world, but which ones specifically, including now, many people don't have particularly clear explanations about this. Shakyamuni Buddha's Bodhi tree of enlightenment is at the Vajra seat in India. But at the very beginning, the tree where he attained enlightenment later, due to various wars that occurred in India, this tree was taken to Sri Lanka and the original Vajra seat was completely destroyed. Later, some branches from the Bodhi tree in Sri Lanka were brought back to the Vajra seat in India. So for the true Bodhi tree. The seeds that it produces now may not be the Bodhi seeds we use today. Therefore, I am quite skeptical about many of our Dharma friends' beads. Of course, some people say that nowadays many merchants in India and Nepal engage in hype, using seeds from other plants and naming them this Bodhi or that Bodhi. Now there are so many types of Bodhi seeds and the prices they charge are particularly high. A while back I spoke about some merits of Bodhi seeds. Later I heard that prices increased in various places, but actually of course they may be from Bodhi tree varieties. There are different varieties of Bodhi trees and seeds from these trees, but as for truly being from the Bodhi tree, in some cases, I'm not trying to discourage your enthusiasm. It's not that because you bought them at particularly high prices before, now I say this, you feel. I myself prefer to use 3 yuan 6-grooved wood beads. Indeed, I have also researched some materials. I haven't found any great merits of 6-grooved wood in related sutras and treatises. It's a relatively special type from Mount Wu Tai that basically doesn't exist elsewhere. It's mainly from Mount Wu Tai. In Tibetan areas, we call it Bodhi 6-grooved wood. I don't know if the Han region uses the term Bodhi 6-grooved wood. In Tibetan areas, we often say Bodhi 6-grooved wood. So this can also be called Bodhi seeds because it's Bodhi 6-grooved wood. What I just explained is that true Bodhi seeds, in the sutras it says that if you truly carry Bodhi seeds on your person, even if you don't recite, even if you don't perform virtuous deeds, whether you commit negative actions or perform virtuous ones, in any behavior, actually their merit multiplies and increases, and is no different from truly doing virtuous deeds. The Buddha also praised it in this way. What I just explained is from the sutra on comparing the merits of counting beads. This is also available in Chinese. When you have time, the story I just told is also in there. So sometimes we can see that indeed the material of prayer beads is important in one respect. But on the other hand, whether from a guru or from special sacred places or special monasteries, the source may be more important. This is what I think. Of course, if you go to India, mainly many people go to India to buy Bodhi seeds. Last year, some people went to Nepal, where one Bodhi seed costs more than 10,000 wen or 20,000 wen. The relatively larger ones cost 30,000 or over 60,000. But after returning, many people thought, hopefully it's really a Bodhi seed. In any case, actually crystal malas are also very good, because according to different sutras, the multiplying merit of crystal malas is quite significant. In any case, when using prayer beads, I hope in the future, whether you are monastics or lay people, especially those who are just beginning to learn Buddhism and listening to teachings online today, you should carry prayer beads with you at all times. Except for a very few people whose status makes it inconvenient, I think as Buddhists, you should be able to visibly carry them. Now, some people don't believe in Buddhism at all, especially now many celebrities and stars all wear prayer beads on their hands. The beads they wear are a symbol and also a fashion statement. Everyone thinks it also represents kindness. Many people say this. If someone wears prayer beads on their hands, there's no sense of fear. People feel this person is very kind. This is also the evaluation of many people. But for us as Buddhists, we shouldn't just treat it as a fashion statement or ornament. That's using it for another purpose. We must treat it as the best method in our spiritual practice. In the past, our root guru, His Holiness, often required everyone at the academy to carry prayer beads. His Holiness himself, wherever he went, even to a very nearby place, he would never forget his prayer beads. If he noticed even slightly, he would ask, "Where are my prayer beads?" For example, when His Holiness was about to give a teaching or propagate the Dharma, when he got up, he would look for his prayer beads. Now, there are some people who have studied Buddhism for many years, and it seems for 3 or 4 days prayer beads have nothing to do with them. There are such cases. I find it quite regrettable. I remember once, His Holiness was in his room. At that time, about a dozen of us went to see His Holiness. His Holiness checked each person one by one who had brought prayer beads and who hadn't. Some people hadn't brought prayer beads, and they were quite scared. Such things happened. So, at our academy, generally speaking, when His Holiness was alive, as long as you were a monastic at the Five Sciences Buddhist Academy, everyone would carry prayer beads. But now I see fewer and fewer people holding prayer beads in their hands, while more and more people carry Apple phones. This is not a good thing. At our academy, this is not a very good situation. I see that some lay people are also like this. I hope that after today's teaching, everyone will carry prayer beads regularly. Whether you're riding in a car, flying on a plane, or staying at home, of course, there are some people whose status is rather special. In such cases, you can use a counter. I see many of our monastics use counters. Using a counter is fine too. It's quite convenient. But in terms of merit, I think carrying prayer beads is better. Many Dharma friends may think that as long as the numbers are counted, that's enough. Every day they use a counter like a gold ring and just click it like this. But actually, I prefer carrying prayer beads. Of course, for a very few people, as I just mentioned, some may have a rather special status, or the community you live in may be rather special. Because nowadays, some people see those carrying prayer beads and consider it a faith. They say, oh, you also have faith, you also believe. Actually, carrying prayer beads is not unique to Buddhism. I see that other religions also have prayer beads. Like Taoism, they also have prayer beads. I think it's 81 beads. They represent the 81 transformations of Taishang Laojun, which is Laozi. They represent this. There are such things. And like Islam, their prayer beads seem to have 33 beads. They recite 3 rounds to recall the 99 names of Allah. There are different ones. And in Catholicism, representing the rosary, there are also, I think, 59 beads. They should also represent a symbol of their scripture. There are such things. I once posted on Weibo about someone from another religion who was also a director of an academy of sciences. And when he wore prayer beads, another person didn't understand and called it superstition. Later, he himself felt quite ashamed about this situation. So sometimes we see people from other religions wearing prayer beads, but it's a bit different from Buddhism. Other religions, I believe they also have their own explanations and meanings. This we cannot deny, nor is there any need to deny. But I myself feel that for Buddhists, indeed, our prayer beads have particularly great blessing power. What is this blessing power? Prayer beads are actually a mudra of a deity, a tool corresponding to the deity. It can be said like this. They correspond very closely with the guru and the practices being cultivated. We all know that people holding prayer beads in their hands must be reciting Amitabha Buddha in their hearts, or reciting Manjushri, or reciting the Avalokiteshvara mantra, or reciting a certain guru's yoga practice. They will have this. If there are no prayer beads at all, their practice may not necessarily be very good. So at any time, I feel it's best not to be separated from prayer beads. At our academy, there is this tradition, so I especially hope that our study groups and lay people related to our lineage, those of you who have been studying very devoutly for 10 or 8 years, for a long time, whenever I see some of our study group Dharma friends, from their appearance you can't tell, oh, you've already studied for many years. They say, yes, I've studied for 8 years, for 7 years. You don't even have prayer beads. I'm very disappointed. Every time I don't see prayer beads, I'm very disappointed. So I hope Dharma friends will regularly carry prayer beads with them. I myself am like this too. When I go to give talks at school, some teachers have told me, they say, when you go up to the podium in a moment, can you take off your prayer beads? I said, I can't take off my prayer beads. I'll still wear my prayer beads. Oh dear, they said, our place is very academic. We are regarding you as a scholar. When you go to the podium with prayer beads, it doesn't seem quite right. The religious atmosphere is too strong. I said, it's fine. With these prayer beads, I am a scholar holding prayer beads. I present myself in this identity. So no matter where I go, some people feel that I'm holding prayer beads in school. But I feel it's only because they weren't used to it before. If they get used to it, celebrities can hold prayer beads too. Whether scholars or we Buddhists, why can't we hold them? I can even wear monastic robes. If I can't even carry prayer beads, then I won't go to give the talk. There would be no point. So, regarding these prayer beads, I think it should be fine like this. Before, when we went to Mount Wutai, His Holiness spoke about some merits of 6-grooved wood, but I can't remember the specifics, I forgot. At that time, many of our Dharma teachers went to Mount Wutai to request them. Today, some people might think I'm promoting Bodhi seeds, but today I'm not promoting Bodhi seeds. 6-grooved wood from Mount Wutai doesn't need special promotion. It's relatively inexpensive. But indeed, at that time, each of us requested 6-grooved wood. There's a type of 6-grooved wood called dragon-subduing wood. It can subdue the Naga race. It says in some texts that it can eliminate obstacles, poisons, and so forth. It has these effects. But more importantly, the 6 grooves represent the 6 paramitas. And through the 6, for example, the 6-syllable mantra, there are many meanings. Among many of us, I once went to Mount Wutai. At that time, with our academy, I think it was 5 or 6 years ago, I also gave 6-grooved wood to each student, but the quality wasn't very good. Sometimes, perhaps at that time, I selected the better quality ones, but later when they were sent over, the quality wasn't particularly good. Mine is of fairly good quality. I've told you before, this one is from 1997. At that time, they said it was bought for 3 yuan, and it's been with me until now. Sometimes I feel, among all my personal possessions now, I'm probably most attached to this. If I don't have this, I might feel a bit sad. As for other things, to be honest, there's nothing much to be attached to. Among my belongings, there's really nothing else. This has been with me for many years. As for some other special ones, for example, for other deities or other mantras, I also have other prayer beads. Some I've carried for 10 years. some for 5 or 6 years. There are such cases too. In any case, I think each of us in the future should obtain prayer beads blessed by our guru or from special monasteries, and everyone should treat them as the Buddha, as the 3 jewels, and regularly not be separated from them. And through this method and this symbol, the compassion and wisdom within one's heart will increasingly grow. A person's practice and conduct in life actually have a certain relationship with their special auspicious objects. So I think when we talk about prayer beads, actually it's also acceptable to regard them as a deity. Therefore, regarding related matters about prayer beads, they are also discussed quite extensively in the Guru's Sutra, which gathers all intentions. Tibetan Buddhist Terma masters like Sangye Lingpa and Ratna Lingpa also discuss it quite extensively in their related Terma teachings. But ultimately, we need prayer beads with special blessings. Nowadays, many people are like, bless this for me today, bless it again tomorrow. I feel this is all unnecessary, just deliberately creating trouble for others. Every day it's, bless this for me today, bless it for me again. In the end, it's as if these prayer beads are constantly being blessed. This is all quite unnecessary. One blessing should be sufficient. I always think about my prayer beads. At that time, His Holiness blessed them once in Chengdu. From that time on, I always thought these are prayer beads blessed by His Holiness, so no matter where I go, I've never lost them. I don't know if I'll lose them in the future. If I lose them, I'll post about it on Weibo. Alright, let's conclude here for today.
Chupun Solen Droa Droa Shao
Bandangara Badma Sodargye Bandangara Badma Sodargye Bandangara Badma Sodargye